Welcome back to Inside the Helmet. We are back. Today is Wednesday. It means we're back on our regularly scheduled program. I'm here, as is my dad, and we have some stuff to talk about. Why don't we introduce our first topic?
Yeah, hey, nice to be back after I took a week off.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you even did the
No,
podcast
I
on your own.
I talked a little bit about F1. I did a weird two-part thing.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we've been trying to go through the different elements that make up a football team. We've talked about offensive line and defensive line and special teams and kickers and all that, the ones that get overlooked. And so
Yeah.
tonight we want to get into a little bit of the coaching because not everybody, I guess, knows how everything works the same way that you and I do, or people who've been on teams. Um, and tonight we want to focus on the offensive coordinator
Mm-hmm.
and the role that they play and the things that go through their mind and what a week is like for them. And certainly there are innovative offensive coordinators, there are conservative offensive coordinators. And we've even seen some offensive coordinators that look like they've never even seen a football. So um, we have our favorites, but start off talking a little bit about the specific role that an offensive coordinator plays. They're beneath the head coach. There's your head coach, and then there's an offensive coordinator. There's a defensive coordinator. We'll probably talk about defensive coordinators next week.
Yeah.
But what is the role of the offensive coordinator in most teams?
Yeah, so if you think about it, the head coach, that's like the president in terms of like the coaching hierarchy. They ordinarily will get the final say, but they're only one man. And so for one person to oversee and have to worry about specific game planning and all that among all the other responsibilities that they have would just be too much. There isn't enough brain power, there aren't enough hours in the day to properly give every little thing the right amount of attention, and then that would therefore leave the team vulnerable. And so instead of the head coach having to necessarily worry about things like offensive game planning, they hire an offensive coordinator to essentially be the head coach of the offense and the offense alone. Like, this is your territory. You make this the best that it can be. And then the head coach obviously will kind of have little bits of input here and there depending on what their kind of skill set is from like their playing days or their journey rising up the coaching ranks. A lot of head coaches at one point were either an offensive or defensive coordinator. So you get like head coaches that are offensive minded or defensively minded. So it depends on the team, it depends on the coach, how much influence they want to have in that game planning process. But generally, the offensive coordinator is the one in charge of all that and gets basically the final say to dissect an opponent's defense going into a game week and come up with a game plan that he sees fit to exploit any weaknesses that he sees on film of the defense and essentially create the playbook.
And probably not surprisingly, there are I've never seen any numbers or anything like that, but probably if you looked at the playing history of offensive coordinators,
Mm-hmm.
probably almost all of them played at some level.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had to guess, there's probably more who played quarterback than played other positions. And there's probably a reason for that because of the way that quarterbacks are trained to look at defenses, right?
Yeah, I sorry, I was trying to look it up. But I didn't get a concise answer. I was trying to look up how many current offensive coordinators in the NFL did play quarterback at some point in time, but not conclusive. It
Yeah.
just gave me a few names that notably did either in the NFL or
Well,
prominent
if you
college.
go off the hypothesis, why would that
Mhm.
maybe be a natural fit?
Well, because the quarterback is the one on the offense anyway, who more so than anybody else needs to know what all of his teammates on the offense are doing in order to, dissect the defense and decide where the ball is supposed to go.
Yeah. So I know offensive coordinator has usually during the week has film to look at
Mm-hmm. Of course.
of the upcoming opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Give us some insights. You've been in numerous rooms listening to
Mm-hmm.
offensive coordinators break down film and try
Yeah.
to develop the strategy for the week on how to attack an opponent. What's that conversation like? What are they looking for?
So, first off, I want to address for anyone who's not familiar with just the way that meetings work and film study works, how I've done it, the two different colleges that I've been at and played college football at. In both situations, my quarterback coach was the offensive coordinator, and so I was in the room with both at the same time. But um, for your meeting, you'll traditionally be watching film with your position groups. So the offensive linemen will be together, tight ends will be together, receivers, running backs, all that will like be with each other and with their specific position coach. That way they can break down and pay attention to their role. But with the quarterback, it's a little different. And obviously, I think this is also partially due to the fact that I had the pleasure of being in the room with the offensive coordinator as well as the quarterback coach, that being that it was the same guy um throughout my entire college career. That it's broken down just like a quarterback would, in that, with your other positions, they're only worried really about what their specific assignment is, but just as a quarterback, when he takes the field before the snap, is looking at the whole field, trying to look at what the defense is doing and, compare the play that he has called against it to figure out where the ball should go based on everybody's assignment. Similarly, the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, in that meeting will be breaking down everything. And so that does lead to some meetings that kind of drag on at times, and it can be a little tedious and it can be a lot, honestly, if you're not really expecting it, if maybe you didn't have that level of thoroughness in meetings and in film study in high school. If you're an incoming freshman getting thrown into these meetings that can go on for an hour and a half, going over every little aspect of this one play that was an incomplete pass in practice, it can get dull, it can get boring, it can get hard to keep your eyes open, but that there is an importance to all of it.
Okay, so compare and contrast because you have a lot of insights into the college level, and
Mm-hmm.
whereas I've done a lot of head coaching with youth football, and with a head coach I was always my own offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I rarely ever would pass that off because I like calling plays.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would watch film in youth football, one of the first things I would try to identify on the defense is who is their best player and who is their worst player.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, guys, you don't have 11 guys or 6 guys or 7 guys, however many are playing in your league on defense, that are all of equal talent. Um, there's always going to be, the one, sometimes two dudes that stand out as, okay, these are the guys we have to account for and get blocked. And conversely, you look for, is there a weak link? Is there a cornerback or a safety who maybe is young and hasn't developed yet? And can we take advantage of that? And so whenever I was developing an offensive game plan, I was looking for who are the dudes, um, whether super strong or super weak, that we can attack. And I kind of filed that away. And your first thing, I think, for me was always, how are we going to deal with their best players? Do we need to double team? Do we need to sometimes even triple team
Yeah.
and stop that guy? And then look for the opportunities to go attack, the guy who's maybe undersized or a step slow. Does it kind of work that same way at the college level?
Definitely, you're still looking for those weak points, but I would say at the college level, because in order to play college football, you still have to be a pretty good football player, and so you're not going to have those standout instances where this one player is just so far out of everybody else's league that like you have to go attack that guy in particular. It's more looking at schemes and like, okay, on second down, what coverage are they in? What is the defense doing as a whole, not necessarily looking at one particular player, so that you can identify patterns and trends to formulate your game plan around. Like, okay, on second down, they're running two high safeties. They are leaving the middle of the field open. So if we find ourselves at 2nd and 8, maybe we'll throw a post.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, at the youth football level, there were games definitely where there were really standout in the leagues that I coached. There were usually they put him at cornerback. The guy who's undersized and a step or two slow. And I had games where we literally would run 90% of our plays over to that side of the field until the other coach figured out that we had figured it out. And then they would take that player and they would move him maybe to the other side. And I remember games where we were like, look, wherever number 25 is, that's where we're going to run the ball because he's not coming up and setting the edge or doing anything like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, the higher you get, clearly at college football, you don't have those guys who just shouldn't be on the field at all,
Yeah.
unless maybe there's an injury and the starter's out, and you're wanting to go after the young player who doesn't have the experience and might bite on a double move,
Hmm.
things like that. But
Yeah, of
as you're looking at defenses, not all defenses are created equal, as we know.
course.
There are some defenses that are attack defenses. You think about like the '85 Chicago Bears. They would just sell out, and everybody was after trying to get a tackle in the backfield, and the way to attack that was with quick passes, get the ball out of the backfield quickly. And there's other defenses that sit back and try to bend but not break, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And if you happen to have a monster, I remember back when the Cowboys would play against teams where they were up against a Lawrence Taylor or a Reggie White, one of these just once in a lifetime type players. The first discussion was, what are we going to do against this player on this play to make sure that he doesn't make the play? And then we'll go attack one of these regular guys instead.
Yeah, of course. You still have those instances, like you said, once in a generation, once in a lifetime type players. I mean, obviously, by nature, you don't come across them every week, but whenever you do, certainly you alter, even if it's like a monster defensive tackle. That's where you come in, and if you remember our offensive lineman episode several weeks ago, um, that's where you change up the blocking schemes to specifically target taking care of that guy.
Right. And at the same time, you also have to try to play to the strengths of your team.
Hmm.
Just like your defense from game to game is going to be different that you're going to be facing from year to year. You're going to have different guys on the field on offense and different levels of experience and talent and speed and size and all of that. And so a good offensive coordinator knows his own players. And do we have a seasoned experienced quarterback who can thread the needle, or do we have a sophomore who's having to start because the senior graduated and he's not going to be able to see things, and so we have to before the snap the same way because he didn't have the experience, so we're going to have to kind of whittle down our playbook a little bit and focus on getting easy reads for him, or do we have a stud running back here who, is a senior and really can dominate a game, maybe with his size or his speed. So you have to balance all of that, right?
Yeah, you absolutely do. I kind of lived through an example of that when I transferred high schools. The obviously this is high school and six-man football at that, so different world entirely, but the principles still applied. Generally where, when I before I came in, the school I ended up going to what was more so of a running team, just by nature of the game of six-man football, but also they didn't have somebody like me, and then I showed up, and for 2 years we were a much more predominantly passing game to suit my strengths, which were strong enough that they shifted the balance of power within the strengths of the team. And then as soon as I graduated, they kind of went back to running the ball more.
Yeah, and to this day, they kind of still are more of a running team, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to be honest and evaluate your offensive line. Do they have the size and experience to coordinate and open holes for a running back? Are they better at pass blocking? Um, do we actually have guys who can run pass patterns, get open, and then catch the ball and do something, or do we have to rely upon trick plays
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and
it's always,
misdirection and yeah,
yeah, always interesting trying to be honest with yourself, especially at the higher levels when this is your job, your livelihood, is how you put a roof over your head and, food on your kids' plates. You sometimes have to make hard decisions and be honest with, okay, well, I like Johnny here. He's real nice, always has a bright smile on his face, and he's working hard in the weight room, but man, he just doesn't have it.
yeah,
We can't give him the ball.
yeah.
So,
Especially if you have, it's got to be really frustrating for an offensive coordinator if you have one of those hot and cold guys.
oh yeah.
The wide receiver. I'm kind of reminded of Terrell Owens,
I was
who
about to say that.
yeah, who has that
Hmm.
reputation. He could make a fantastic play that you're going, wow, not too many people could do that, and then he drops an easy pass.
Yep.
Or a running back who is feast or famine. He's either going to break a long run or he's going to fumble.
Mhm.
Or like even the great Barry Sanders, for all of his greatness, and we saw him do things that no human should be even able to do. Uh, Barry Sanders probably had more tackles for loss than any other great player I ever saw because he's out there juking. He was a little water bug running back, and he would either break it for 60 yards or he would lose 5 yards. And you have to take that into account. With the offensive coordinator too, they have a list of plays that, okay, what if it's 2nd and 6 or what if it's 2nd and 15? What's going to be our strategy? I mean, are we going to just, if it's 2nd and 15, we lost 5 yards on the first down. We're going to have a play that's going to try to get 7 or 8 yards back and give us a reasonable distance to try to make it on third down. Or for many, many years, the Raiders, Oakland, Los Angeles Raiders, now Las Vegas Raiders, lived under this philosophy of we're going to throw it deep and we're going to stretch the defense out and we're going to make them nervous. And they always had really fast wide receivers. And so you also have to look at, do we have a guy or guys on the team who can do that? Or are we going to have to grind it out? Are we going to have to play it's okay to punt and play field position and maybe score 20 points a game? Or do we have game breakers? I know when Tyreek Hill was on the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, that combination, they were, stretching the field all over the place, which opened up the lanes for the running backs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
um,
the life of an offensive coordinator really probably is year to year, and even within a year, it depends upon who's healthy. You know, I mean, you get one key guy, and it doesn't always have to be a skill position player. It could be, what if your left tackle, who is really talented and can keep your quarterback upright, goes down, and now you got the backup in who doesn't have that same ability or experience or development or whatever it may be. And so now we can't really drop our quarterback on a 7-step drop and throw it deep because he's going to get sacked. And that can change game to game and sometimes even within a game. There's so much to keep track of with not only your 11 that are on the field, but who's going to take their place if somebody gets hurt.
Absolutely.
Or transfers now that we're, we got the portal and guys can transfer, and you were counting on, well, we've got a really true wide receiver number one who's got an offer from a bigger school, and so they're going to be gone, and that changes all of the dynamics about the plays that you're going to call.
I think the big takeaway is that the game of football is doomed.
How so?
Well, just what you just said. The lack of loyalty, the lack of being able to count on people to stick around and really build something great like the Patriots dynasty or like what Alabama had in the 2010s.
Yeah. I remember, I know this is much lower level football, but in between football seasons, many times I would coach you and just straight up flag football, just have something to do in the spring. And we had, one year, there was a guy that we had, can't remember his name, it's been too long, but he was one of the fastest kids I think you ever threw to. And as long as he was on the field, the defense was nervous, and we were trying to get him the ball every chance we got. And we generally, if he was out there, had a really good chance to win. And we got to the playoffs against a team we had already faced and beaten fairly easily twice. And the morning of the game, this guy called and said, "Oh, I have to be in a wedding in Houston. I can't get out of it. Sorry, guys." And so now the wide receivers you were throwing to, they were good, but they weren't great. They weren't like this guy. And we went out, and of course, predictably, the game was much closer. And it came down to, I know you remember this moment.
I do.
It came down to, we had a chance to win at the end with the last throw of the game, and you threw to a guy in the end zone. The ball was just a little bit low. I mean, it wasn't a bad pass. I think you had some pressure in your face. The dude could have caught it. As it turned out, he was good, but he wasn't great, and he dropped it. And so suddenly the season was over because we didn't have that one Tyreek Hill type player. I will always believe that had he been there, the game wouldn't have been close.
I agree.
And we tried to change the philosophy. The offensive coordinator part in me said, well, we're just going to have to kind of pick and peck our way down the field, and we almost beat them, but we didn't. And so those are the kind of things that an offensive coordinator has to think about.
Definitely.
Okay. All right. So yeah.
Transitioning away, I want to first leave us with a little stat. Going back to Barry Sanders, I looked this up about 5 minutes ago while we were still talking about him. He was tackled for a loss 336 times during his NFL career, which is the most runs for negative yards in NFL history.
Yeah.
And he lost about 952 yards on all those.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. That's about right. And boy,
mhm.
when he did make positive yards, though, he more than made up
Made a
for it.
lot. Yep.
Yep. So,
Mhm.
okay. So transition to F1 racing. What's going
Yep.
on this week?
Yep. Had a race in Barcelona, former home of the Spanish Grand Prix was the name of it. Now they've got a brand new track that many are calling a disaster, but we're gonna But we're going to see later on in the season how good it actually will be. It's not even fully completed yet. Anyway, that's in Madrid, will be the new home of the Spanish Grand Prix. Now, the race in Barcelona, just called the Barcelona Catalunya Grand Prix, named after the track it takes place on. Um, what's interesting about the track in Barcelona is that for the longest time it was home to preseason testing, and so as it's a very like kind of general neutral track, it doesn't have too many like extreme corners or elevation changes, anything like that. It's a very neutral track, which is a good place to kind of get a vast general feel of how good your car will be on the vast majority of situations you'll find yourself in on any given track. And therefore, the races had historically been pretty boring because, as preseason testing was done there, all the teams, all the drivers kind of already had extra time taking their car around that track, and therefore they had it perfected more than any other track on the calendar, and therefore they weren't making as many mistakes. And so the good teams and the bad teams were at the top of their game, and so obviously that meant the good teams just kind of ran away with it. Anyway, um, however, and I actually admittedly slept through the best parts of the race on accident.
Uh,
Um, so the big key takeaways from the race, um, Max did about everything he could. Started fifth, finished fourth because championship leader Kimi Antonelli, who qualified third, his first time qualifying off of the front row, meaning outside the top two, all season for a main race this season. He qualified third and was battling with teammate George Russell for a spot on the podium, and he actually in the waning laps of the race, he had passed Russell, but then his car gave out and he was not able to finish the race. Unfortunate. We had about six, maybe seven drivers not finish the race, but none of them were due to a crash. All of them had reliability issues. Even one, Nico Hulkenberg, the Audi driver, was battling with the Racing Bulls of Liam Lawson just ahead of him. And Lawson ran a little wide into a corner and kicked up a bit of gravel that shot back and hit the emergency kill switch on Hulkenberg's car, which shut the car off and it couldn't be restarted. It's one of the most insanely bizarre DNFs in F1 history. Anyway, but this race did get really good towards the end because Ferrari, notable for having some historic all-time strategic blunders over the last 20 years or so, actually pulled off a very good strategy to you see it was very hot in Barcelona, and so the tires would degrade very quickly, meaning that the drivers had to make multiple pit stops over the course of the race, leading for variance in strategy and all that sort of deal. Lewis Hamilton, who notably had a horrible 2025 season, his first season with Ferrari after stepping away from his monster run in partnership with Mercedes all those years where he won 6 world championships. He had his first season where he did not get a podium at all in 2025. And many were saying it was just time for him to hang up his gloves, go retire, old man. You don't have him anymore. He came out swinging. He's already got multiple podiums in 2026, and he qualified in second in Barcelona and then went on to have a strategic masterclass and take his first win with Ferrari and the first non-Mercedes win of the season. It was incredible to see. Great, great atmosphere. Everyone was happy that day. It doesn't really matter who you're a fan of. Like you can smile at that. It happens to also be 30 years since Michael Schumacher, of course, the other driver with 7 world championships. He won his first victory with Ferrari at Barcelona in 1996, 30
Mm,
years ago. So
mm.
it was a pretty cool little coincidental, callback that happened. But yeah, and then now we have a week off, and then we'll go to Austria the week after that. So
Okay.
we'll see what happens. To end off the show, we're gonna do what we did a couple episodes ago, where we get an NFL team and we kind of build our like dream all-time offense. Yeah, so a quarterback, running back. Are we going two receivers or just one?
We'll go with two receivers and a
All
tight
right,
end.
and then a tight end, and then yeah,
Yeah, I
we'll
mean
each
two deep,
we'll
two
each
deep. Yeah,
so we'll
and
each have a team, and then at the end, once we both have our lineups, we'll discuss who would win. Last time, I had the Packers and you had the Jets,
yeah.
and obviously the Packers would win. I'm actually going to spin a random wheel to get my team, so I'm spinning it right here. See if it'll focus. Obviously, if we get a team we've already done, who is this? The Philadelphia. Oh, well, all right. I
Okay.
mean, someone's got to do it. I'll do the Eagles.
All right. You're gonna take the Eagles. I'm gonna take the San Diego slash Los Angeles Chargers.
All right then.
All right.
Should we let you do the Chargers first?
Sure. Um. So there's two choices. I mean,
Hmm.
the two deep is easy. With apologies to Drew Brees because he made his
Hmm.
name for the Saints. I
Yeah.
know he was on the Chargers. He's a Hall of Famer. But the two best quarterbacks in Chargers history are Philip Rivers and Dan Fouts.
Hmm.
Um, I personally, between the two, would probably start Dan Fouts because he was more dominant in his time. Philip Rivers
Hmm.
hung out long enough and put up numbers in a passing league that probably dwarf anything that Dan Fouts did. But um, they had a coach named Don Coryell back in the day that they referred to him as Air Coryell because
Hmm.
his passing game was uh, dominating the league at the time. So I'm going to go with uh, Dan Fouts with backup with Philip Rivers. Um, I think on my running back, there's two names that immediately come to mind. The great Hall of Famer LaDainian Tomlinson,
Hmm.
who was the best running back overall that they ever had. A guy who would back him up for me would be Chuck Muncie.
Okay,
He was
name
a
I
little bit,
haven't heard of.
yeah, Chuck Muncie was a little bit bigger, more of in the Franco Harris build kind of mold. A little
Okay,
bit bigger guy, not as fast, not as versatile as LaDainian Tomlinson. But to me, I think he would probably be the second best running back that they ever had.
sure.
If you go wide receivers, I can't really think of anybody that Philip Rivers threw to who would fit on this list. So I'm
Keenan
just
Allen.
gonna, yeah, I mean Keenan Allen had numbers and stuff, but
Hmm. It's consistent.
for yeah, but for me, um, they had a couple of guys. Charlie Joyner is a Hall of Famer who
Hmm.
caught passes from Dan Fouts, and there were two guys. First was a guy by the name of John Jefferson, who in the early days of Fouts was the dude, the speed dude. I think he got traded to the Packers, and he got replaced by, ironically, a guy that came over from the Saints named Wes Chandler. Wes Chandler had hands and would catch everything, and phenomenal acrobatic type catches. And then for tight end, I'm really only coming up with one name, but he was the greatest San Diego Chargers tight end of all time, and that
Hmm.
was Kellen Winslow Sr.
Not Antonio Gates. Okay.
Yeah, I would. Okay, Gates is also a Hall of Famer, but if you want to talk about just freakish athletes for his time,
Okay.
um, yeah, Kellen Winslow
Sure.
Sr. who was in one of the greatest football games ever played, a playoff game against the Dolphins. He finished with like 13 catches and 190 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And the thing that everybody remembers was he was the guy who got on the field and blocked the field goal that could have won it for Miami. He jumped up. He was a tall guy, and he was so exhausted at the end that his teammates
They
were
carried him
practically
off.
carrying him off, and that's
Mhm.
kind of a historical moment there.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, apologies to Antonio Gates, who was a great
I mean,
player for
if
many
we're going
years.
too deep, he can be your backup.
Yeah, I mean,
Great
Antonio
help.
Gates deserves to be the backup. So,
Oh yeah, I
so
think
that's
he has
my
the numbers.
yeah,
It's a similar like Rivers to Fouts situation where Winslow is probably the better all around player, but the newer player had the more inflated numbers.
yeah, yeah, no doubt. So
Mhm.
that's the lineup I'm putting up against whoever you tell me your Philadelphia Eagles
Okay.
too deep is.
All right. Well, starting at the quarterback position, I believe Donovan McNabb has all the franchise records, right?
Probably, yeah.
I would imagine he does, and the Eagles don't have like an all-time great quarterback. I mean, they have like Donovan McNabb was one of the maybe top five best quarterbacks of the 2000s,
Yeah.
maybe like lower end of the top five. So I think I feel pretty comfortable, even though I never saw him play. And I it's because it's the Eagles. I haven't gone and done my research the same way I have with some other teams because I just don't care about the Eagles.
Right.
It's my like snubbing them because I don't like them as a Cowboys fan. But I know enough to know that okay, Donovan McNabb has the franchise records and word of mouth. People say he was really good in 2000s. He got him to a Super Bowl, got him to a handful of NFC Championship games in a row. So I'll give it to him. But then the other guy, there's two names that I'm thinking about throwing out, and neither of them are Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
And neither of them are Nick Foles either. The two quarterbacks that actually won Philadelphia their Super Bowls at long last. Um, one is probably the more obvious choice, and that's Randall Cunningham. As athletic and freakish as he was as a player, especially early in his career, I think that's where I'm leaning more towards. But the other name that I'm bouncing around in my head is Carson Wentz.
Hmm.
Obviously, he didn't have the longest career or anything. He was very quickly derailed by injuries. But if you look back in 2017, like, yeah, everyone remembers Nick Foles for, pushing them across the finish line, but they wouldn't have been anywhere near that without the MVP like efforts that Carson Wentz was putting in before he, ripped up his knee or whatever happened to him. Um, so
So
I
no
would
no
be
love no love for Ron Jaworski, the
no.
Polish rifle.
No love for Ron Jaworski, English. Um, yeah, it is a shame. I did kind of like Carson Wentz. He's a pretty good guy from what I've heard, and it would have been cool to see how his career could have played out if he didn't have the injury troubles that he had that very quickly derailed his career, and then the Eagles stuck with did they? No, they went back to Wentz, didn't they? Even though he was injured, and people were saying, "Oh, why don't you stick with Nick Foles?" Anyway, that's a whole different conversation. Donovan McNabb and then Randall Cunningham, two quarterbacks. For the running backs, I'm gonna go kind of recent. For the starter, I'm gonna go Saquon Barkley. I know he had injury troubles early in his career with the Giants and all that, but just when he's been with the Eagles, he's looked like one of the two or three best running backs in the NFL consistently. Rushed for 2,000 yards not that long ago, and just is a very very good all around running back. And then for my backup, my like third down back, I go LaShawn McCoy.
Hmm.
Very very agile. Um, just can kind of make the highlight play, kind of like a lesser version of Barry Sanders is how I remember him.
Okay.
So
I'll
like,
throw out another old school name
sure.
that not too many people remember. Um, kind of a poor man's Tony Dorsett, if you will, from the 70s and early 80s. They had a guy, I want to say even he played college football at Abilene Christian or something, named Wilbert Montgomery.
Hmm. Okay.
He had a very similar style to Tony Dorsett.
Hmm.
Um, I think everybody would take Dorsett over Wilbert Montgomery, but
Hmm.
it's at least worth throwing his name out there because there was a
Yeah.
time he was Ron Jaworski's running back, um, and
Okay.
and definitely was a Pro Bowl, perennial Pro Bowl guy.
Yeah. Um. So we're on wide receivers now.
Yeah,
First off, I mean, obviously you go T.O. You know, he was with the Eagles for a few years. He was there with that Super Bowl run that they lost to the Patriots. He was still
played a Super Bowl with a
Mhm.
broken leg or whatever.
He was in his prime, both athletically and being a diva in front of the media.
True.
So we need that energy on the Eagles. And then second, I'm gonna go with another player from the LaShawn McCoy era in Deshaun Jackson. Just an
Yeah,
absolute burner. You know,
Mister dropped the ball at the 1 yard line.
yeah,
What he's remembered for.
we'll just coach him very well to stop doing that. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
more
he had some
if you're
really
gonna
good
drop the
plays.
ball, let it be on a punt return that you then pick up and take to the house.
Yeah, no, he was a special talent, and just because I'm throwing out old school names, um, there was a time when there were two receivers Jaworski threw to. One was named Mike Quick, which is a great name for a wide receiver.
Hmm.
He was their burner, but the guy who was the freak on the team was a guy by the name of Harold Carmichael.
I thought about throwing out Harold Carmichael, but I kind of figured that he had sort of this Madden effect where like Madden in like their Madden Ultimate Team mode where they make cards of like legends sometimes. They make
Yeah.
a Harold Carmichael card every year that's really good and a lot of people use it cuz it's really tall, but he played so long ago and I kind of doubted that he actually had the production to really be mentioned in reality.
He probably didn't have the numbers. He was 6'8". He was a great
Yeah.
possession receiver,
Yeah.
and the
It- uh,
thing the thing I always hold against him is that when they were coming up with the that 1 year when they did like 25 old school people who got into the Hall of Fame, he
Mhm.
was a second team All 70s wide receiver behind my dude Drew
Mhm.
Pearson,
Mhm.
and they picked him to go into the Hall of Fame and not Drew Pearson.
That's
And
insane. I didn't even know he was
well,
in the Hall of Fame.
yeah, no, he is.
Hmm.
He made it that year. Drew, of course, made it the next year.
Yeah, that's
But
crazy.
those of us who know the difference were like, well, wait a minute. If he's second team All 70s, All Decade, and Drew
Hmm.
was number one, how does he go ahead of him? But no,
Yeah.
Carmichael was a freak. Um,
Yeah. I knew he was a freak. I just didn't know if he was actually legit or if he was like a
Yeah, if
bowl.
he wasn't 6'8", he
Hmm.
probably not would not have been as
He'd probably
great.
be a manager at a Denny's.
Well, maybe not that, uh, but
Moving
he
on to
made a
tight
lot of big
ends.
plays.
Moving
Jeez.
on to tight ends. There are two names that really there are actually three names that stick out in my mind, but I'm gonna choose two of them. First off is Keith Jackson.
Oh yeah.
There's your old school player.
Yep.
And then for the backup, I'm torn between Zach Ertz and Dallas Goddard, two more modern guys.
We got to go
I'm
with Ertz
yeah, I
between
don't
the
know.
two.
They're about even for me. I think Ertz just has played longer than
Yeah.
Dallas Goddard has, and so yeah, I'll go with Zach Ertz,
Okay.
and
So
then
we've now got built two teams,
mhm,
and the debate is if they met all in their prime,
mhm.
who is going to be the favorite to win? And I think it comes down to, well, two names.
Okay,
The quarterback that I named for the Chargers, Dan Fouts,
mhm,
and the running back, LaDainian Tomlinson, are both Hall of
yeah,
Famers.
yeah.
I don't think there's many people that you name for the Eagles who were Hall of Famers.
I think Saquon will be a Hall of Famer one day.
Yeah.
Um, Neither quarterback is. LaShawn McCoy is never going to get in. T.O. is a Hall of Famer. Deshaun Jackson will never sniff it. Is Keith Jackson in the Hall of Fame?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think Kellen Winslow Sr. is in the Hall of Fame
Keith
too.
Jackson's in the College Football Hall of Fame.
Yes. He played at Oklahoma.
Yeah. He's Sooner and an Eagle. Oh, I don't like the guy.
Right?
Mm.
So I think just based upon Hall of Fame credentials, I think the Chargers have to be favored in that game.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah. I think my team wins this year.
I
this
think
week.
so, but it's definitely a lot closer than Packers against Jets.
Well, I picked the Jets to get them out of the way because they've been 50 years of futility.
Yeah. And I picked the Packers last time because I thought you picked the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm saving that.
Yeah. Well,
So
I think I'm gonna keep using the wheel. I'm just gonna like take off the names that that we've done before. So
right.
we'll come back to that next time. Oh,
maybe next time. Well, next week I'm going to be on a boat. So
yeah, it's true. Next week we're gonna be stuck with me again, and I get to talk about warming up to Austria.
Right.
So we'll see what that's gonna look like.
In 2 weeks, maybe we both use the wheel.
Yeah, I could use the wheel for you as well.
Yeah.
Final thing. Last time we did this, I talked about a dream theoretical Formula One lineup of 2 drivers for each team's history. And last time I did Red Bull, I believe, with Max Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel. I think this time, this time we're gonna go. Ooh, what team should I do? This time we're gonna do Ferrari. I think they just won the race with Lewis Hamilton. I'm not going to restrict myself to saying one like current driver and one driver from history. It can be from any 2 drivers that have ever raced for that team, but obviously taking into account what they did with that team. So that being said, I'm going Michael Schumacher and Niki Lauda. The only 2 multi-world champions with Ferrari.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Yeah, I guess that's it for this episode Inside the Helmet. Thank you all for joining us, and I'll be back next week. So see you all then.
I'll be back in 2 weeks. God bless.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.